Have you ever feared that one day you'll wake up, look back at your life, and realize you spent too much of it on things that were never truly important? Have you ever felt like every day passes by so quickly, yet your life never really seems to move forward? You still wake up every morning, still stay busy, still feel exhausted, still repeat the same familiar cycle. But deep down, you know something isn't right. Like life is quietly slipping through your fingers little by little, without a sound, without warning, without any major tragedy. Just very ordinary days, repeated for far too long. The times you said, "I'll start tomorrow." The hours disappearing in front of a screen. The dreams postponed for one more day, then one more year. And do you know what the scariest part is? Most people don't realize they're losing their lives until time has already taken too much away to ever get back. In this video, I want to talk to you about the most important lessons about time, about how people quietly lose their future through small things repeated every single day. Not to scare you, but to wake you up before your life is consumed by things that were never truly important. And you should stay until the end of this video, because the final mindset may completely change the way you see your life. Lesson 1. You don't lose your life in a single day. There's something I realized after many years of observing people. Most people think life falls apart because of one major event, one huge failure, one terrible decision, one devastating fall. But no, life rarely disappears in such a loud way. It usually disappears very slowly, so slowly that you don't even notice it, like a wall rotting from the inside. From the outside, everything still looks fine, but every day the structure inside weakens a little more. Then one day, it collapses, and everyone calls it sudden. But the truth is, it had been happening for years before that. I once knew a man back in the 1980s. He always said he had big plans. He wanted to start his own business, wanted to change his family's life, wanted to read more books, wanted to become a better version of himself. He wasn't lazy. He wasn't the type to give up easily. The problem was that he always thought he had more time. Every day, he said, "I just need to get through this phase. Once things settle down, I'll begin. Next year will be different." But do you know what's terrifying? Those words sound perfectly reasonable the first time you say them. And then 1 year passes, then 5 years, then 10 years. Eventually, his life became a loop. Go to work, feel exhausted, procrastinate, comfort himself, then repeat it all over again. No major tragedy ever happened. Time simply passed in silence. That's what made me think so deeply. People often believe they're standing still. But the truth is, no one is ever truly standing still. Either you're moving forward, or life is quietly slipping away from you. There is no neutral ground. I want you to think about this for a moment. How many times have you said, "Tomorrow I'll be more serious. Next week I'll start. I'll wait until things get better first"? Sound familiar? Most people don't lose their lives because they lack potential. They lose them because they always believe they still have plenty of time. But time is the strangest thing I've ever known. When you're young, a year feels endless. You think you can postpone everything. You think a few months don't matter. You think a few years will somehow come back around. But then one day, you look in the mirror and realize you've grown much older than the last time you truly lived for what you wanted. That's when people begin to feel regret, not because they failed, but because they never truly began. I once said, time is more valuable than money, because money can be earned again. But a morning that has already passed will never come back. A youth that has already gone by will never return. A missed opportunity usually doesn't return either. But do you know what's saddest? Many people still live as if their lives are endless. They spend time like a wealthy person, mindlessly throwing money out the window without ever looking down, hour by hour, day by day, year by year, quietly disappearing. I remember sitting in a small cafe in California in the late 90s. An older man was sitting near me. He stared out the window for a long time, then said something I've never forgotten. "I thought I still had time." That was it. Not some grand speech, not a complicated philosophy. But sometimes, a simple sentence contains an entire lifetime within it. I thought I still had time. I looked into his eyes, and I saw something money could never fix. Regret. You know, people are incredibly good at enduring hardship. But there's one thing that's very hard to endure: the feeling of knowing you could have lived better. That's when you realize you once had healthier years, more opportunities, more energy, but used them on meaningless things. And the most dangerous part is that the process happens very quietly. No one warns you when you waste an evening. No one pulls you back when you procrastinate for a day. No one shouts, "Careful, your life is slipping away." everything still seems normal. You still wake up, still go to work, still laugh and talk, still live. But deep inside, a part of your life is slowly disappearing, like water dripping onto stone. One drop seems insignificant, but thousands of drops can reshape an entire rock. Human life works the same way, not through one huge decision, but through thousands of small, repeated moments. And that's why the thing that destroys lives most often is not failure. It's unconscious living. It's spending too long without truly realizing where you're going. And what makes it even more dangerous is that the modern world is making people lose the ability to focus on their own lives. Lesson 2, distraction is becoming an epidemic. I believe one of the most dangerous things happening to modern people is not poverty, not failure, not even lack of opportunity. It's that they can no longer sit quietly with themselves. I want you to think about this very slowly. When was the last time you sat in complete silence? No music, no screen, no conversation, nothing pulling your attention elsewhere. When was it? Many people today can't do that for more than a few minutes. The moment the mind starts becoming quiet, they immediately look for something to fill the emptiness. A screen, a meaningless conversation, noise, a new stimulation. They fear silence. Because in silence, people begin to hear themselves. And sometimes, that's more frightening than anything else. I once met a young man in the early 2000s. He was intelligent, quick-minded, full of enormous potential. But throughout the entire conversation, he couldn't stay fully focused for more than a few minutes. His eyes constantly wandered. His mind was constantly pulled away. He always needed something newer, faster, more exciting. He told me, "I feel incredibly busy, but at the end of the day, I can't even remember what I accomplished." That sentence stayed with me for a very long time, because that was no longer a time management problem. It was a problem of attention. And wherever your attention goes, your life will follow. You cannot build a meaningful life with a mind constantly torn apart by distraction. That is impossible. A tree cannot grow strong if people dig it up and replant it somewhere else every single day. The human mind works the same way. To grow, you need sustained focus. But the modern world is doing the exact opposite. It trains people to become impatient faster, think more shallowly, react constantly, and live more unconsciously every day. Everything is competing for your attention. And do you know what's terrifying? Many people don't realize that. When they lose control of their attention, they also lose control of their lives. I've seen people with unbelievable potential who still couldn't accomplish anything truly great. Not because they lacked intelligence, but because their minds were everywhere at once. They start one thing, then get pulled into another. Start chasing a dream, then abandon it halfway through. Start changing themselves, then fall back into old habits after only a few days. Their lives become like a boat constantly changing direction in the middle of the ocean. And a boat like that rarely reaches shore. I think many people are living in that state without realizing it. They wake up, and the first thing they do is let the world enter their minds. News, noise, images, comparison, other people's stories. Little by little, their attention is pulled away from their own lives. Then at the end of the day, they feel exhausted, but not because they built something meaningful. It's because their minds have been drained by too many things that never truly mattered. That's a very strange kind of exhaustion unique to this era. The body isn't overworked, but the mind is always overloaded. I once said, "You become what you think about most, but if your mind is constantly filled with chaos, it becomes incredibly difficult to become the best version of yourself." A person who cannot focus usually cannot go deep either. And everything valuable in life requires depth, a deep relationship, a major skill, a strong career, a mature soul. All of it requires time and undivided attention. But modern people are gradually losing that ability. They've become accustomed to everything happening quickly, so they begin losing patience with things that require time to grow. They want fast results, fast transformation, fast success. And when things don't happen immediately, they chase another new stimulation, like someone constantly digging new wells, but never digging deep enough to find water. I think that's why so many people feel empty inside. Not because they have nothing, but because they've never truly stayed present long enough in anything. Not present in their work, not present with their family, not present in their own dreams. Their minds are always somewhere else. And slowly, their lives drift away the same way. Do you know what the saddest part is? A person can live an incredibly busy life without ever truly living. Because life is not measured by the number of hours you exist. It's measured by where you place your mind each day. And that's when I began realizing something very important. Many people are using busyness to hide their own stagnation. Lesson 3, busy does not mean progress. I've met many people who told me they didn't have time. They were too busy, too much work, too many responsibilities, too much pressure. And I believed them, truly. Because most people today live in a constant state of motion. But after many years of observation, I realized something strange. Many people are always busy, yet their lives barely change. Where they were 10 years ago is exactly where they still are today. The same old habits, the same old exhaustion, the same unfinished promises to themselves. The only difference is that they're older. That's when I began to understand movement and progress are not always the same thing. A person can run all day and still head in the wrong direction. Have you ever watched an ant? It's always moving, always busy, always active. But sometimes people live the same way, always doing something, always responding, always handling things, always busy, but never truly stopping to ask, is this actually leading me toward the life I want? I once knew a man who worked nearly 12 hours a day. He woke up very early, left home while it was still dark, returned when his children were nearly asleep. Everyone looking at him thought, he worked so hard. And it was true. But after many years, he was still living under stress, still had no time for his family, still felt trapped in his own life. One day he told me, I don't understand why I work this much and my life still isn't getting better. I didn't answer right away. Because sometimes what people need is not a quick answer, but a moment quiet enough for them to finally see the truth themselves. And the truth is, many people use busyness to avoid facing themselves. It sounds strange, but it's true. If they're always busy, they won't have to think about the dreams they abandoned, the direction their life is drifting, the emptiness inside them, or the fear that they're living beneath their true potential. Busyness becomes a refuge, a way for people to feel like they're moving forward, when in reality, they're just going in circles. I went through a phase like that myself when I was younger. Back then I believed, if I simply did more, everything would improve. But eventually I realized, if you don't know where you're going, moving faster only gets you lost more quickly. That's why I've always believed, clarity matters more than speed. Many people wake up every morning and immediately let life sweep them away. Work, phones, noise, urgent tasks, other people's demands. They react to everything all day long. Then night comes and they feel exhausted. But the sad part is that exhaustion does not always create value. There's a kind of exhaustion that comes from building something meaningful. That kind of exhaustion is worthwhile. But there's another kind of exhaustion. It's when you spend all your energy on things that lead your life nowhere. I think many people are living in that state. They constantly complete small tasks, yet never truly move closer to the life they want. Like someone spending the entire day polishing the deck of a ship, while the ship itself is heading in the wrong direction. Do you know what's most dangerous about fake productivity? It makes you feel like you're trying. And that feeling is incredibly addictive. You answer emails, organize small tasks, stay busy all day, do many different things, then tell yourself, I really got a lot done today. But deep down, you know you still haven't touched what truly matters. People naturally prefer tasks that make them feel immediately productive, because the things that truly matter are usually slow. Building discipline is slow. Learning a major skill is slow. Changing yourself is slow. Building a life you're proud of is very slow. And because it's so slow, many people return to things that merely give them the feeling of doing something. That's why so many lives become trapped in the cycle of busyness. They never stop long enough to think, never ask, what truly matters? What is taking my time away? What is quietly destroying my future? I once said, don't confuse activity with achievement. That was one of the greatest lessons of my life. Because the world constantly rewards people who appear busy, but life only changes when you focus on what truly has value. Not more, but better. And sometimes, the thing quietly destroying your future is not one major decision, but the small habits repeated every single day that you believe are insignificant. Lesson 4, small habits are destroying your future. I once said something that many people later repeated. Success is a few simple disciplines practiced every day. Failure is too. And the longer I live, the more I believe that is true more than ever. Because human life is rarely destroyed by one single major decision. It is usually worn away by very small things, repeated long enough. one late night, one act of procrastination, one unconscious day, 1 hour wasted on things with no value. It doesn't sound serious, but the problem is, life is built from repeated actions. Not one day, but thousands of days added together. I once knew a young man working in a small store in the late 90s. He always said he wanted to change his life, wanted to learn more, wanted to start a business, wanted a better future. But every evening after work, he always said, "I'm too tired today. I'll start tomorrow." Then he spent hours in front of a screen, wasting time on things that numbed his mind, sleeping very late, waking up exhausted, continuing to procrastinate. Every day looked the same. Do you know what was sad? He didn't feel like he was destroying his life because everything felt so normal. That's how small habits deceive people. They don't destroy you immediately. They don't create consequences the next morning. So you think, it's fine. But life is not determined by one single day. It is determined by the direction you move every day. A ship that drifts just 1 degree off course, at first, almost nobody notices. But if it continues in that direction long enough, it will arrive somewhere completely different. Habits work the same way. One wasted hour seems small, but repeated over many years, it can steal your entire future. I think many people underestimate the power of small things. They think, one act of procrastination is harmless. One day of giving up is harmless. One wasted evening is harmless, true. One time is harmless. But the problem was never one time. The problem is, small actions are slowly becoming who you are. Every day you procrastinate, you teach yourself. Tomorrow is always more important than today. Every day you break a promise to yourself, you weaken your self-respect. And it happens very quietly. No one sees it. But deep inside, you begin losing trust in yourself. I went through that feeling when I was young. There were periods when I knew I needed to change, but kept postponing the important things. And what exhausted me the most was not failure. It was the feeling that I was slowly becoming someone who no longer kept promises to himself. That is an extremely dangerous feeling. Because when a person loses trust in themselves, they begin living smaller, afraid to dream big, afraid to begin, afraid to pursue what they truly want. And it all starts from very small habits. I want you to remember this. No one wakes up one day and suddenly becomes the worst version of themselves. It is a process, little by little, like water leaking into a ship. At first, very small, almost unnoticeable. But if it is never repaired, one day the whole ship sinks. That is what is happening to many people. They do not destroy their lives with major tragedies. They destroy them with repeated procrastination, repeated comfort seeking, repeated distraction, repeated unconscious living, and then many years later, they look back at their lives and ask, why am I still here? But the answer is usually hidden inside the small things they once believed were harmless. You know, success is not actually that mysterious. People with better lives usually do not do extraordinary things every day. They simply protect better habits than other people. They understand that. A strong life is built from small but consistent actions. A person reads a few pages every day, saves a few dollars every week, wakes up a little earlier, keeps one more promise to themselves. Those things seem small, but time amplifies everything you repeat. That is why I have always believed. Discipline is not punishment. Discipline is how you protect your own future. And people who are truly successful understand that more deeply than most people. They protect their time almost ruthlessly. Lesson 5, successful people protect their time ruthlessly. There is something I realized very early when I started meeting successful people. They do not live like the rest of the world. Not because they are smarter than everyone else. Not because they are luckier. And not because they have more time. They simply understand the value of time more deeply than other people. That is the difference. I once sat with a businessman in the late 80s. He was very wealthy. But what impressed me was not his money. It was the way he treated his time. He did not allow his days to be pulled away by meaningless things. Did not spend hours in unnecessary conversations. Did not let his mind constantly drift. Everything was intentional. Even the way he rested was intentional. That was when I began to understand. Successful people do not just manage money. They manage energy, manage attention, and above all, they manage their lives through time. Do you know what's interesting? Most people say time is valuable, but live as if it is endless. They spend time very carelessly. 1 hour here, 1 evening there. 1 week passes without truly doing anything meaningful. Then they tell themselves, I'm still young. I still have plenty of time. I used to think that way when I was younger. But then the years passed, and I realized time does not move as slowly as we think. Life moves very fast, much faster than you imagine. One day you are still talking about the future, and suddenly, many years have passed. That is why successful people often have a very unique sense of urgency. Not panic, but awareness. They understand that every day is taking away a part of their life they will never get back again. So they protect their time almost ruthlessly. It sounds extreme, but it is actually wisdom. Because if you do not protect your time, other people will spend it for you. I have seen that happen to many people. They wake up every morning, and immediately their lives are pulled away by other people's demands, noise, distraction, urgent but unimportant tasks. Then by the end of the day, they have no energy left for their own lives. And the sad part is, many people only give whatever is left of the day to their dreams. And usually there is not much left. I once asked a man, "How much time do you spend each day on your future?" He stayed silent for a long time. Because sometimes the most painful truths are the ones that cannot be answered immediately. You know, the way you use your time reveals what truly matters to you, not your words, but your time. If someone says family is important, but is never truly present with their family, time has already revealed the truth. If someone says they want to change their life, but never spends time developing themselves, time has already revealed the truth there too. Your life always follows where your time is invested. That is why I have always believed time is not money. No, time is far more valuable than money. Lost money can be earned again. Lost opportunities sometimes return. But a day that has already passed is gone forever. A youth that has already ended will never come back a second time. A moment with your parents, an afternoon with your children, an opportunity to begin may only appear once in a lifetime. But people usually realize that only when it is too late. I have met people who spent their entire youth chasing things that were never truly important. Then one day, they had money, experience, everything, except they no longer had time. That always makes me think deeply, because the world often teaches people how to make a living, but very few people are taught how to live. Very few people are taught that. Every time you waste time, you are not just losing a few minutes. You are losing a piece of your life. That is why truly successful people are extremely careful with their attention. They understand that the most dangerous thing is not losing money. It is allowing meaningless things to steal their minds every day. They choose very carefully what deserves their thoughts, what deserves their focus, what deserves their life, because they know a secret most people never realize. Where your attention goes, your future follows. Lesson 6, attention is the new asset. I think many people underestimate the power of attention. They think the most valuable thing is money, status, opportunity. But after many years of observing life, I began believing that the thing that truly determines a person's future is where they place their attention every day, because life always moves in the direction of the mind. If your mind is constantly dragged into meaningless things, your life will slowly become meaningless too. If your mind lives in negativity, it becomes very difficult to build a positive life. If your mind is always scattered, it becomes very difficult to create anything great. Everything begins with attention. I once met a young man who wanted to change his life. He read many books, listened to many motivational speeches, always talked about big plans. But there was one problem. His mind never stayed still long enough for anything. Today he wanted to learn one skill. Tomorrow he got pulled towards something else. Next week he changed goals again. Then a few days later, everything started over from the beginning. He was always attracted by the next new thing. And that made me realize something very important. Many people do not fail because they lack ability. They fail because their attention is stolen before their lives have a chance to mature. Do you know what happens when someone cannot maintain focus long enough? They spend their entire lives at the level of almost beginning, almost changing, almost succeeding, almost growing, but never going deep enough to truly transform. Like someone constantly planting seeds, but always leaving before harvest season. I once said, "You become what you think about most," and I believe that now more than ever. Because the human mind is like soil. Whatever is planted into it every day will slowly grow into your life. If every day you spend hours on comparison, noise, meaningless information, short-term stimulation, then it becomes very difficult to build a deep and powerful soul. Modern people are living in a world where everything wants to capture their attention. Everything is screaming, "Look at me, listen to me, Care about me. And if you are not conscious enough, you will spend your whole life reacting to other people's priorities instead of building your own life. That is what many people are experiencing without realizing it. They wake up, and immediately their minds are filled with the outside world. Other people's opinions, other people's lives, other people's success, other people's noise. Then slowly, they lose their inner voice. That is why many people feel empty even while constantly busy, because their attention no longer truly belongs to themselves. I once sat talking with a very successful man in the early 2000s. He told me one short sentence: "The hardest thing to protect today is not money but the mind." I never forgot that sentence, because it is true. A person who loses money can still rebuild, but a person who constantly allows their mind to be pulled everywhere will eventually lose the ability to build anything with depth. And everything great requires depth. A lasting marriage requires depth. A major skill requires depth. A mature soul requires depth. A meaningful life also requires depth. But depth only appears when attention is held in one place long enough. That is becoming increasingly rare in this world. People are too accustomed to jumping from one thing to another too quickly. A thought barely begins to deepen before it gets interrupted. An emotion barely begins to be understood before it is buried under new noise. A dream barely begins to mature before it is replaced by the next distraction. And then many years pass, and they wonder why their lives still feel shallow and empty. Do you know what the saddest part is? Many people are spending their ability to focus on things that a few years from now they will not even remember. Meanwhile, the things that truly matter, health, family, the soul, the future, life purpose, receive only whatever energy is left over. That is a very dangerous trade. I believe that. Where you place your attention today is where you are sending your life. And if you do not learn how to protect your mind, the world will always find a way to use it for you. But do you know what is even more frightening? Many lives are not destroyed by major tragedies. They are destroyed by very ordinary days, repeated for far too long. Lesson 7. An ordinary day can destroy an entire life. There is something most people do not realize until it is too late. Your life is not determined by rare moments. It is determined by how you live on very ordinary days. Not the days when you feel extremely motivated, not the days when you feel powerful, not short bursts of inspiration, but a very ordinary Tuesday, a very ordinary evening, a morning when you do not feel like trying, yet still choose to do what must be done. That is where the future is truly created. I think many people are waiting for one big moment to change their lives. One powerful push, one huge wave of motivation, one major event. But life rarely works that way. It usually changes direction very quietly, one day at a time, like a ship in the middle of the ocean. If it drifts just 1 degree off course, the sailors almost never notice immediately. The sea still looks the same, the wind still feels the same. Everything appears completely normal, but if the ship continues in that direction long enough, it will arrive somewhere completely different. Human life works the same way. One wasted day may not seem important, but thousands of wasted days will create a life full of regret. I once met a man in the late 90s. He was not a bad person, not lazy, not lacking ability. He just had one habit, always postponing important things a little longer. Never, no, just tomorrow, next month, I'll wait for a better time. At first glance, it looked harmless, but many years passed, and he was still trapped in the same cycle. The dreams remained only in his head. The plans were still never started. Life stood still. Do you know what the most frightening part was? No one looked at him and thought his life was falling apart, because everything still looked perfectly normal. That is the danger of ordinary days. They lull people to sleep inside their own lives. I once said, the most expensive days are often not the days you spend a lot of money, but the days you waste time, because time has a very strange way of turning small things into big things. One day spent reading seems small. One day spent procrastinating also seems small. But time will magnify both. That is why you must be careful with how you live each day. Not sometimes. Every day. Because the future is not built in special moments. It is built in repeated actions. I think many people are numbing themselves through familiarity. They wake up at the same time, do the same things, think the same way, repeat the same habits. Then they begin believing, life is just like this. No, life does not have to be that way. People simply become too comfortable with stagnation. A car left motionless for too long will gather dust. A soul that no longer grows works the same way. And the sad part is, Many people do not realize they are slowly giving up on themselves, not through words, but through the way they live every day. Every time they choose comfort over discipline, every time they choose procrastination over action, every time they let a day pass unconsciously, they are sending their lives in a certain direction. Then time begins to compound. That is the greatest power of time. It multiplies everything you repeat. If you repeat procrastination, time will turn it into regret. If you repeat discipline, time will turn it into strength. No one escapes that law. There was a period in my life when I felt extremely busy, but completely empty inside. Every day passed quickly. I always had something to do, always had a reason to postpone important things just a little longer. Then one day, I asked myself a very difficult question. If I continue living like this for another 10 years, where will my life end up? That question frightened me. Because sometimes, what wakes people up is not present pain, but the image of their future if they never change. I want you to ask yourself that today. If you continue living exactly as you are now, what will your life look like in 5 years? What about 10 years? Who will you become if you continue repeating days like today? That is not a question meant to make you pessimistic. It is meant to wake you up, because life can change very quickly when you change the small things repeated every day. Lesson 8. Life changes direction through small changes. After many years of observing people, I realized something very interesting. Most people overestimate major changes and underestimate the power of small things repeated every day. They believe that to change their lives, everything must happen dramatically. One huge decision, one explosive moment, one massive wave of motivation. But life rarely changes direction that way. It usually changes very quietly, little by little, like the sunrise. You do not notice its movement second by second, but after some time, everything is completely different. Human growth works the same way. I once met an older man in the early 2000s. He was not famously wealthy, not a speaker, not a major businessman, but he carried a very unusual calmness. During our conversation, I asked, "What changed your life?" I thought he would tell me about some major turning point. But no, he smiled and said, "I simply started doing the small things right every day." That answer stayed in my mind for a long time. Because people often want to change their lives instantly, while nature works through accumulation. A tree does not grow overnight. It grows day by day, even though you can barely see the change. A strong person grows the same way. I think that is what many people are missing. They want results so quickly that they no longer have patience for small progress. If change does not happen immediately, they assume all effort is useless. But life does not reward impulsiveness. It rewards consistency. There was a period in my life when nothing seemed to change at all. I read every day, learned every day, tried to improve myself little by little. But for many months, I saw almost no visible results. And do you know what the most dangerous part was? Not the difficulty, but the feeling, maybe none of this is making any difference. That is the moment when many people quit. Because people usually need immediate results to keep going. But the things that truly matter often grow in silence. Like a seed beneath the ground. For a long time, it looks like nothing is happening. But underneath, the roots are quietly growing. Then one day, everything begins changing very quickly. Life works the same way. A person who reads a few pages every day at first does not seem very different. But a few years later, their entire way of thinking has changed. A person who saves a few dollars each week, at first it seems insignificant. But time transforms small things into big things. A person who wakes up slightly earlier, slightly more disciplined, slightly more focused. Those changes seem very small today. But the future is always built from small things most people underestimate. I once said, life does not get better by chance. It gets better by change. But real change rarely comes from short bursts of inspiration. It comes from small decisions repeated even when you do not feel motivated. That is where character is formed. You know, when a person begins keeping small promises to themselves, they do not just change habits. They change how they see themselves. Every time you do what you said you would do, you rebuild trust with yourself. And that is where all true change begins. Not outside, but inside. I think many people are waiting for life to change first, before changing themselves. But life usually works in the opposite direction. You change first, then life begins changing direction. One better thought, one better habit, one better choice, little by little. That is how great lives are built, not through one perfect day, but through many ordinary days. lived consciously. I want you to remember this. You do not need to change everything today. You do not need to become a completely different person overnight. What you need is to stop underestimating small changes. Because sometimes, one small decision today can save your entire life in the future. 1 hour spent learning instead of wasting time. 1 evening fully present with family. 1 time standing back up after wanting to quit. 1 day keeping a promise to yourself. Those things seem very small, but time remembers all of them. Then 1 day, you look back at your life and realize the future was never changed by one massive moment. It was changed by the small things you chose to repeat every day. That is why I have always believed. Your life is being built right now through the things you think are insignificant. And perhaps the most beautiful part is, as long as you still have time, you still have a chance to begin again. Perhaps after everything we have talked about, you are beginning to realize a very important truth. Life is not taken from you in one moment. It disappears very slowly, through unconscious days, through procrastination, through hours spent losing your attention to things that were never truly important. And the most frightening part is that the process usually happens very quietly. No one warns you when a year passes. No one reminds you that youth is slowly fading away. No one tells you, this may be the most beautiful period of your life. Time simply keeps moving forward silently. But I want you to remember this. What matters is not how much time you wasted in the past. What matters is whether you wake up before losing the rest of it. Because the moment a person begins living consciously, their life can completely change direction. Not instantly, but little by little, one better thought, one better choice, one better habit. Then time will do the rest. I have seen people completely change their lives simply because they finally became serious about small things. They started protecting their time, protecting their attention, protecting their minds, protecting their futures. And gradually, everything changed. Not because of magic, but because they finally stopped living unconsciously. I think that is what most people are missing. Not motivation, but awareness. Awareness to recognize what is stealing their lives away, what truly matters, and who they are becoming through what they repeat every day. Because in the end, your life is not built from a few major moments. It is built from what you do when no one is watching. The mornings you choose to get up, the times you keep promises to yourself, the days you keep trying even when you see no results yet. That is where the future is truly built. If today you feel like you have wasted too much time, do not despair. As long as you are still hearing these words, your life is not over yet. You still have a chance to change direction. Still have a chance to become a better version of yourself. Still have a chance to live a life that years from now you can look back on with pride instead of regret. But that will not happen simply because you wish for it. It begins with small changes right after this video ends. With how you use your time tonight, with what you choose to focus on tomorrow, with whether you continue living unconsciously or begin truly living. If this video made you think, take a moment to like and subscribe to the channel. Not to chase temporary motivation, but so we can build a more conscious life together one day at a time. And share this video with someone you care about, someone who may be quietly losing themselves without realizing it. Before we finish, I want to leave you with one question. If your life 5 years from now is created by what you repeat every day today, are you satisfied with the direction you are heading? Leave your thoughts in the comments. I truly want to read them. And remember this. Success rarely comes from massive overnight changes. It comes from small choices, repeated long enough with persistence and awareness. I truly appreciate that you stayed until the end of this video.